A new report from the University of Texas shows Texas inmates are testing positive for COVID-19 at a rate 40% higher than the national prison population. And that's not all. Texas inmates are dying from COVID-19 35% more than the rest of the U.S. inmate population. Joining us to break down some of these alarming numbers is Dan Rosenzweig-Ziff. He's a reporting fellow with our coverage partners at the Texas Tribune, and he's been covering the story as it develops. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start here. How many confirmed cases are there in prisons, and how does that compare to the rest of the U.S. prison population?
Yeah, so in Texas state prisons, there are more than 23,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and that rate is 40% higher than the national prison population average.
And how many incarcerated Texans have died from COVID-19 this far? And how does that rate compare to the rest of the U.S. prison population?
So 190 incarcerated Texans in prisons have died and 14 incarcerated Texans in jails. And when you do that per 10,000 people, that rate is 35% higher than the rest of the prison population.
Is there any differentiation between federal, state, and county correctional facilities?
Yeah, so the study mostly focused on state prisons and county jails. It did not focus on the federal prisons. And most of these cases, as I mentioned, were in state prisons, and there were some in county jails.
Compared to other states' rate of death and infection from COVID-19, where does Texas rank on that list?
In terms of infections, Texas is one of the worst. It's actually the second highest in the nation behind Florida. And in terms of deaths, it's tied for the third worst.
Is there any reason why? Do we know why this is the case?
We don't know exactly why. Some of the studies focused on the overwhelming majority of these deaths have been from incarcerated Texans over the age of 55. And that is something that advocates are working on to see if there's some way to focus on that population and make sure they get the health care they need or look at early releases.
Any idea how inmate testing in Texas compares to testing being done in the other 49 states?
So it's important to note with testing that Texas has the highest prison population in the country in just raw numbers. With that said, they have tested over 200,000 incarcerated Texans so far, which is one of the top in the country.
How accurate are these numbers that we're talking about here?
So they're almost certainly undercounts because of the way that deaths are confirmed by the state, which takes a final autopsy, which can take 3 to 6 months. We know that this is a little bit delayed. And there's also other reasons to think that this could be an undercount. For example, some people might have died without being tested for COVID. Some people's their death might not be attributed to COVID, but their pre-existing conditions could be worsened by the virus. And then in jails, because people are often in the facility for less time, it's harder to track if they contracted the virus and then later died after leaving the jail.
Here in Brazos County, every week we report the amount of inmates who have tested positive and staff members who have tested positive. So who is dying, and what do advocates and experts say should be done?
Yeah, just like the entire state and the country, older patients are making up the disproportionate share of the deaths. People over 55 make up 80% of the deaths, and there are also, as you mentioned, a good number of staff deaths. And we're looking at just a specific number of facilities. 7 of the more than 100 state facilities make up 56% of all the prison deaths. And these are facilities that tend to house older Texans with physical disabilities or have serious medical conditions. And like I mentioned before, advocates are starting to wonder, or they have been wondering for some time, why we're locking up people that are old and vulnerable. That is, according to the people who did the study at UT.
How do these recommendations go from idea and then into action?
So the professors at UT Austin are working on a second follow-up report. They wanted to get this one out just to get the public the information, but they are going to provide policy proposals with their second follow-up.
Dan, where can somebody go to look up all this information and to follow more developments?
To follow more developments, please go to texastribune.org. You can also follow me on Twitter at Dan Rosenzweig-Ziff. That's Dan Rosziff, and I will be continuing to cover this story.
All right, perfect. Dan Rosenzweig-Ziff. He's a reporting fellow with our coverage partners, the Texas Tribune. Thanks again.
Thank you.